Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. I've got Will here with me, our Director of Financial Planning. Maybe get a little nerdy today, Will. We've got one that's right up your alley. What happens if you inherit a retirement account? What are the rules, regulations, the can and cannots?
Yeah, so they have changed drastically over the last 5 years with the passage of the Secure Act and Secure Act 2.0 here earlier in really to start the 2020s. A lot of new changes to IRAs that are inherited. It used to be you inherit an IRA and then you just have to take yearly required minimum distributions for the remainder of your life until you then pass. Now the IRS has changed their tune on these. They say, they're looking at the deficit, they're looking at the budget, they're saying, hey, we need to kind of claw some of these tax dollars forward out of these IRAs. They released the 10-year rule for inherited IRAs. This is for anyone who, most commonly would inherit IRAs if you're inheriting from a parent or, an aunt or an uncle, or anyone that is 10 years older than you. If they pass their IRA to you, the IRS says, you have the next 10 years to completely empty this retirement account and pay taxes on all of the money that is in that account. Throughout that 10-year period, if the IRA owner had started required minimum distributions, then the IRS says, okay, well, you must continue those distributions throughout the 10 years according to your life expectancy. And then by the end of the 10th year, you've got to make sure everything comes out of that IRA.
Yeah, if I could stop you right there, because this was something that I know I asked you probably every 30 days for a 2-year stretch, because we've talked some about this and we have clients that have seen this. And over the last when this rule first came out, the IRS did not get very specific on, over this 10 years, do I still have to take the RMDs? So they would not give us guidance. And so they were waiving them and pushing them off and all of this stuff. So, just wanted to draw special attention to that now that we have kind of the formal rule from them. So you're saying if that person took RMDs prior to their passing, the inheritor still has to keep taking those RMDs.
That is correct. So in the first couple years, a lot of people weren't sure. They had missed those required minimum distributions. The penalties were waived. The requirements were waived. Now, if you miss a required minimum distribution in the year that you were supposed to take it, the IRS will assess a penalty on the taxes associated with that missed RMD. So it's very, very important, very costly if you get it wrong. Very important to make sure you're getting those required minimum distributions out of those accounts each year. Now, a big kind of drawback, or kind of what the IRS, I think, is hoping most people do, is typically people inheriting these are in their prime working years in higher tax brackets than the people that they inherited the money from usually. And typically what the IRS is going to hope you do is just take the minimum amount out each year, and then in that 10th year, get hit with this giant balloon income payment that's going to even push you into a higher tax bracket, right? So that the IRS and the government can take more taxes out of those distributions. So it's very important, and a lot of strategy that we work with our clients on is evenly distributing that entire IRA balance over that 10-year period. So best case scenario, right, we avoid getting pushed into a higher tax bracket at the end of the 10th year. And that's just a really, really efficient way to minimize the tax burden across the lifetime of the IRA. It presents a really good opportunity to plan your taxes efficiently so that you're in control of the tax bill, right? Understanding exactly how much you're going to owe, and then provide a little bit more control instead of just letting the rules govern how you handle these inherited IRAs.
All roads lead back to ongoing financial planning, don't they? Because each one of these scenarios is going to be unique. If you're going to retire in 3 years, you inherit it today, you're going to retire in 3 years, and then you're going to be in a much lower tax bracket. We have done that where we just take the really small RMD over the next 3 years while you're still working in a higher tax bracket. Then when you retire, then we spread them out over 7. There's lots of different ways to navigate this to help mitigate tax consequences to this. So yeah, all roads lead back to financial planning.
Yeah, definitely. There was one more slide that we wanted to show. And just because it's come up recently with some of our clients here over the past couple of years, spousal beneficiaries of IRAs have different rules, right? They are not required to take it out over the 10-year rule. However, there was one specific scenario that was making the required minimum distributions for the spousal IRA a little bit higher than they otherwise needed to be, causing a little bit more taxes to be taken out than they traditionally needed to be. So if you look at the scenario here on the screen, we've got John, who passes away at age 68. He had a traditional IRA, and his wife inherited that traditional IRA, was the primary beneficiary. So if she then changes the ownership designation of the beneficiary from a spousal IRA to her own IRA, which can be done after you inherited a spousal IRA, then she has a couple benefits specifically in this scenario. A major one is that she delays required minimum distributions until she is 73, as opposed to if it was the spousal IRA, when it would be his age 73, then the RMDs would have to come out, as well as those RMDs will be taxed more beneficially as far as how they calculate the dollar amount of those required minimum distributions using the single lifetime table versus the spousal lifetime table. She will be able to be required to take out a little bit less if she changes that IRA into her own name, as opposed to keeps it a spousal beneficiary IRA. So that's an important designation there. Just keep that in mind and watch out for that little tax benefit to making it your own IRA.
Definitely. So if this is something that's happened to you or someone definitely don't go with this alone. There's a lot of rules. There's a lot of regulations. There's a lot of strategy that's the door is open to. And so give us a call. Well, call Will, get those questions answered, and make sure you navigate that the right way. So again, we'll appreciate your time. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.